Leela Morgan had always lived in a world where everything was planned, controlled, and decided by forces beyond her own will. She had spent her entire life preparing to serve her people, learning diplomacy, etiquette, and the complicated web of interstellar politics. Her family, influential in the alien hierarchy, had set her path long before she could even think about what she wanted. And now, standing in the grand hall of the Luminar space station, she felt the weight of her duty pressing down on her. Shoulders more heavily than ever, the space station itself was a marvel of technology and design. It floated in the orbit of a distant, colorful planet, its sleek silver towers glinting against the backdrop of endless stars. It was a hub for diplomats, traders, and emissaries from countless planets. And every corner of it spoke of careful planning and order. Lila, despite being used to such environments, felt small and out of place. She adjusted the ceremonial robe she wore, its fabric shimmering in the artificial lights, a symbol of her people's tradition. She hated it. She hated how it made her feel exposed and artificial, like a puppet on display. The reason she was here was simple, yet unbearable. She was to be married. Not for love, not for choice, but to cement an alliance with another civilization. Her mind kept circling to the human who was supposed to be her groom, Ethan Clark. She had never met him before today, and yet she was expected to accept him, to stand beside him, to become his partner for life. It was absurd. How could she be expected to feel anything for someone she knew nothing about? Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of her escort, an elder of her people who had been assigned to guide her through these negotiations. He was stern, with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "The human ambassador will arrive shortly," he said in a voice that carried authority. "Remember your role. Remember what is at stake." Lila nodded, though inside, she was filled with a restless storm of emotions. Duty, fear, anger, and a strange, fluttering anxiety that she couldn't quite name. She moved toward the central chamber, where the ceremony of the engagement would take place. Other dignitaries were already gathered, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and indifference. Lila felt like an actor about to step onto a stage for a performance she had not chosen. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Ethan Clark stepped in. He was a human, as everyone had warned her, but there was something about him that was disarming. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes that seemed to look directly at a person rather than at their rank or title. His hair was slightly tousled, and he wore a simple suit that, while formal, carried a touch of warmth and ease. Lila found herself studying him without realizing it. Her mind racing with questions and judgments, Ethan approached with a calm confidence. He extended his hand in a gesture that was meant to be polite, perhaps also to bridge the gap between their very different worlds. Lila hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His touch was firm but gentle, and for a moment, she felt a strange flicker of something she couldn't name trust, perhaps her curiosity. She quickly pulled her hand back, scolding herself silently. This was not the time for distractions. The engagement proceeded with all the formalities one might expect. Words were exchanged, protocols observed, and the representatives of each civilization nodded approvingly at every step. Yet, beneath the ceremonial veneer, Lila felt a growing tension. She was supposed to feel excitement, gratitude, even affection. Instead, she felt suffocated, trapped in a narrative that belonged to everyone but her. She caught glimpses of Ethan, who seemed to notice her discomfort. There was no judgment in his gaze, only patience and something that looked remarkably like understanding. After the ceremony, a reception was held in a nearby hall. The room was filled with music and laughter, though Lila found it hard to participate. She moved among the guests with mechanical politeness, smiling at the right moments, nodding at greetings, but her mind remained elsewhere. She watched Ethan from across the room, noticing the way he interacted with others. He was attentive without being overbearing, respectful without being cold. He laughed easily, listened with interest, and seemed to care genuinely about the people around him. It was unsettling. She had expected arrogance, ignorance, or at least the awkwardness she associated with humans. Instead, he seemed normal, remarkably human. A servant approached her with a glass of a sparkling beverage. and she accepted it with a polite nod. Ethan walked up beside her, carrying his own drink. "Would you like to walk with me?" he asked. His voice was calm, unassuming, and free of any pretense. Lila blinked, surprised. "Walk?" she repeated. "Yes," he said, gesturing toward the observation deck. "It's quieter there, and you can see the stars. I find it helps to clear my head." Lila hesitated, then allowed herself to be led. The observation deck was a panoramic haven, glass walls revealing the vastness of space. Stars twinkled like scattered diamonds, and the distant planet below glowed with swirling colors of blues and greens. It was beautiful, and for a moment, Lila forgot her anger, her fear, her resentment. The universe was vast, and here she was, a small part of it. But not insignificant. Ethan walked beside her in silence for a while. Then he spoke softly. "I know this isn't what you wanted. None of this is easy." Lila looked at him sharply. "You have no idea what it's like to be forced into a situation you cannot escape." "I may not," he admitted, "but I can try to understand. And I want to. I promise I will respect your space, your choices, and your feelings. I won't pretend this is simple or perfect." Something in his words, in the sincerity of his tone, made Lila pause. For the first time that day, she felt seen not as a symbol, not as a pawn, but as a person. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. She wasn't used to being treated this way. She wasn't used to anyone truly acknowledging her inner struggle. They spoke quietly about trivial things at first: the view, the music, the technology of the space station. Slowly, the conversation shifted to deeper matters. Lila found herself revealing small pieces of herself: her thoughts, her dreams, her frustrations. Ethan listened without interruption, without judgment. And when he shared parts of his own life, his family, and his reasons for wanting to make the alliance work, Lila felt an unexpected connection forming. It was not love at least, it's not yet, but it was something fragile and new. Respect, understanding, the beginnings of trust, as they returned to the main hall. Lila's emotions were in turmoil. She was angry at herself for feeling something for a human, for allowing herself to be swayed by simple gestures and kindness. Yet, she couldn't deny the warmth that had begun to grow in her chest. She realized with a mixture of fear and curiosity that perhaps Ethan Clarke was not the adversary she had expected him to be. Perhaps he was something more. The evening drew to a close, and Lila retreated to her quarters, exhausted from the whirlwind of events. She sat by the window, staring at the stars, trying to process the day. Her mind replayed Ethan's words, his smile, the ease with which he moved through the world. She felt a reluctant admiration growing inside her, seed of something she wasn't ready to name. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of stars and human faces. Lila woke with a sense of unease and anticipation. The engagement was only the beginning. The real challenge, learning to coexist, to understand, and perhaps even to care, was just beginning. And somewhere deep inside, despite her resistance, she felt a small spark of hope that this forced union might lead to something unexpected, something that could change her world, and perhaps even her heart. The next morning, Lila Morgan woke to the soft hum of the space station. Light filtered through the observation window, painting the room with the colors of the distant planet below. Despite her efforts to rest, her mind kept returning to the events of the previous evening. Ethan Clarke's presence lingered like a gentle shadow she couldn't shake. She had fought against the thought, reminding herself that she did not owe him her trust, her time, or her feelings. And yet, a small part of her was drawn to him. Curious about the human who had managed to make her feel seen, breakfast was held in the main dining hall, a wide-open space filled with diplomats and emissaries. The human and alien customs mixed in a way that felt both fascinating and awkward. Lila walked in with her usual composure, the ceremonial robe she had worn the previous night replaced with a simpler gown. She noticed Ethan already seated at the end of a long table, quietly observing the room. He waved at her with a warm, welcoming smile. And she felt a flicker of something she did not fully understand. As she took her seat, conversation flowed around her. Diplomats discussed trade, alliances, and the latest discoveries from nearby planets. Lila listened politely, her thoughts wandering. She had spent her life surrounded by discussions of strategy and politics, yet it was strange to see Ethan, a human, navigate these conversations with ease. He asked questions with genuine interest, listened carefully, and responded thoughtfully. He did not dominate the discussion, nor did he shy away. There was a balance in his approach that impressed her. After breakfast, Lila was expected to join a series of meetings with other alien representatives. She walked with Ethan to the conference room, where holographic displays floated above the tables, showing planets, star systems, and complex data streams. As the discussions began, Lila noticed Ethan taking careful notes and asking clarifying questions when necessary. He never interrupted or showed impatience. He was respectful, yet fully engaged. It was clear that he was serious about his role, and he cared deeply about the success of their alliance. During a break, Lila found herself walking down the corridor with Ethan. The station's architecture was both futuristic and elegant, with smooth curves, transparent walls, and subtle lighting. The two of them walked in silence at first, each lost in thought. Then Ethan spoke. "I hope I'm not overstepping," he said softly, "but I'd like to understand more about your culture. I know it's not my place to assume, but I want to learn." Lila looked at him, slightly surprised by his humility. Most humans she had heard about were impulsive and brash, but Ethan was different. He genuinely wanted to connect. "It's not easy to explain," she replied. "Our customs, our rituals, even our daily habits are very different from yours. It can feel strange for someone from another species to understand them." "I want to try," he said simply. They walked on, and Lila found herself explaining small details about her world, how decisions were made, how ceremonies were conducted, the importance of honor and family. Ethan listened carefully, asking questions when he didn't understand. There was no judgment in his tone, only a desire to comprehend. As she spoke, Lila realized how rare it was to meet someone who truly listened. She had spent years surrounded by people who were polite but never fully engaged, and now she felt a connection forming, slow and deliberate. Later, Lila attended a protocol demonstration with Ethan. Aliens from different civilizations showcased their customs, from greetings to formal dances. Lila found herself watching Ethan's reactions with curiosity. He was attentive and respectful, trying to mirror the gestures and expressions accurately. Sometimes he stumbled, but he laughed lightly at his mistakes, and Lila couldn't help but smile. It was refreshing to see someone approach learning with humility and good humor. The day passed quickly with meetings, presentations, and ceremonial practices. Despite the busy schedule, Lila felt a growing sense of companionship with Ethan. It was not yet friendship, certainly not love, but a cautious curiosity that made her pay attention to him in a way she had never done with humans before. She noticed how he treated everyone with respect, how he noticed small details, and how he seemed genuinely interested in the well-being of those around him. During a quiet moment in the afternoon, Lila found herself on the observation deck again. The stars stretched endlessly, and the planet below glimmered like a living jewel. Ethan joined her, standing beside her without speaking for a while. Then he said, "It's beautiful, isn't it? Makes everything else feel smaller." "Yes," Lila whispered. She had said the word without realizing it. She had no words for the emotion swirling inside her. There was fear, yes, but also a strange comfort. She didn't trust it yet. She felt safer in his presence than she had expected. Ethan turned to her, his expression earnest. "I know this is all strange and difficult, and I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise to be honest, to respect you, and to do my best to make this work. If you ever need space, you will have it. If you need support, I will be there. That's all I can offer for now." Lila studied his face. There was no pretense, no hidden agenda. He wasn't trying to manipulate her or charm her with words. He was offering sincerity, and it was disarming. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate that more than I can say." Evening came, and the space station's lights dimmed, creating a soft glow that reflected off the glass walls. A formal dinner was held, and Lila found herself seated next to Ethan again. Conversation flowed more easily than it had the previous night. They talked about small, everyday things, books, music, stories from their respective worlds. Lila discovered that Ethan had a curious mind, a thirst for knowledge, and a deep empathy that surprised her. He was human, yes, but he had qualities she had never expected to find. After dinner, the two of them walked through a quiet corridor, empty now, except for the soft hum of the station. Lila felt a strange comfort in his presence, a warmth she had not anticipated. She realized she was no longer thinking only of duty and obligation. She was beginning to see Ethan as a person, not just a symbol of an alliance or a political strategy. They reached a small lounge overlooking the planet below. Ethan gestured toward the view. It's amazing how different yet similar our worlds can be. You and I come from different places, but right now we share this moment. Isn't that worth something? Lila hesitated, then nodded. Yes, it is. They sat together in silence for a while, watching the planet's colors shift as the day ended and night approached. Lila's thoughts were a tangle of fear, curiosity, and a growing sense of trust. She did not yet understand the feelings stirring inside her, but she could not deny that Ethan Clarke had begun to change something in her, a spark of openness, a crack in the wall she had built around her heart. As the night deepened, Lila returned to her quarters, her mind alive with thoughts. Ethan's presence lingered in her memory, his words echoing softly. She felt a small, hesitant hope that perhaps this forced engagement might not be as unbearable as she had feared. Perhaps with time, understanding, and patience, something unexpected could grow between them. And while she still struggled with the idea of being forced into matrimony, she realized that the human beside her might just be someone she could respect, learn from, and perhaps even care about. Sleep came again, slower this time, filled with stars and quiet conversations, and the promise of a new day where she would have to navigate not only political obligations but the first flickers of trust and connection with a human. She had never expected to understand or touch her heart, Lila. Morgan woke to the quiet hum of the space station again, though this morning felt different. The events of the past 2 days weighed on her, yet there was a flicker of anticipation she could not ignore. Ethan Clarke had become more than just a symbol of her forced engagement. His presence had begun to ease her tension, and though she refused to admit it fully, she was curious about him in a way she hadn't expected. The day began with training exercises for all visiting dignitaries, a routine meant to familiarize them with the station's systems and safety protocols. Lila found herself paired with Ethan for some of the exercises, and she could feel the nervous energy that always accompanied their interactions. Yet this time, the tension was mixed with something warmer, something that suggested familiarity. They moved through the drills with care, each noticing the other's movements and reactions, and Lila felt a growing sense of cooperation between them as they practiced. Ethan's approach was patient and encouraging. When Lila struggled with a complex maneuver, he did not criticize or rush her. Instead, he offered gentle guidance, adjusting his own pace to match hers. Lila realized she was learning to trust him, not just because of the exercises, but because he respected her limits and valued her input. It was a small thing, yet it meant more than she could articulate. After the exercises, they were led to a briefing room where holographic displays projected data about the nearby star systems. Discussions turned to trade routes, security measures, and potential threats to the Alliance. Lila had been well trained in such matters, but she found herself paying attention to Ethan in a new way. He asked thoughtful questions, offered practical suggestions, and never seemed intimidated by the complexity of the information. It was clear that he took the responsibility seriously, and that impressed her deeply. During a break, Lila wandered to the observation deck alone, seeking a moment of calm. The stars stretched endlessly, and the planet below gleamed like a living gem. She could feel her heart rate slow as she gazed at the beauty of the universe. Ethan appeared quietly beside her, offering a soft smile. "You always come here when you need a moment?" he asked. Lila nodded. It helps me remember that the universe is larger than my problems. That perspective is necessary sometimes. Ethan leaned against the railing, looking out at the expanse. I understand. It's easy to get caught up in the small things and forget how vast everything is. They stood in silence for a while, both lost in thought. Then, Ethan spoke again, his voice quiet but steady. Lila, I know we're thrown together in ways neither of us chose. But I want you to know that I respect you. I don't want to take anything from you, only to learn from you, understand you, and be someone you can rely on. Lila looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his words. She had heard such things before from politicians, diplomats, and even family members. But there was a difference. Ethan's words were not designed to manipulate or appease. They were genuine, and for the first time, Lila felt seen, not as a tool or symbol, but as a person. The realization made her chest tighten with a mix of caution and curiosity. As the day progressed, Lila and Ethan were assigned to work on a joint project simulating emergency scenarios aboard the station. It required cooperation, quick thinking, and trust. They were tasked with navigating the station's corridors, identifying potential hazards, and ensuring the safety of all personnel. Lila could feel her pulse quicken as alarms rang and red lights flashed. Despite the chaos, Ethan remained calm, issuing instructions clearly and efficiently. Lila followed his lead, surprised by how easily she could rely on him in a high-pressure situation. The simulation ended successfully, and both of them were flushed with adrenaline. Lila realized she was smiling more freely than she had in days. Ethan caught her glance and returned it with a small grin. There was no need for words. The shared experience had forged a silent connection between them. Trust had begun to grow, slowly but surely, and with it, an unspoken bond that neither had expected. Later, they returned to the common area, where other delegates were sharing stories and laughing quietly. Lila and Ethan joined them, engaging in light conversation. She noticed that with each interaction, her defenses loosened slightly. She found herself laughing at his observations, appreciating his sense of humor, and even looking forward to moments when they could speak privately. It was a foreign feeling, one she wasn't ready to name. But it was undeniably present. In the evening, a formal dinner was held to honor the alliance. Lila found herself seated next to Ethan again, and the conversation flowed more naturally than it had during previous events. They spoke of personal stories, childhood memories, and small, everyday experiences from their respective worlds. Lila discovered that Ethan had a remarkable ability to connect with others, to listen without judgment, and to respond with thoughtfulness. It was a quality she found herself admiring more with each passing day. After dinner, two of them walked along the observation deck once more. The planet below shimmered in the station's lights, and the vastness of space seemed to stretch endlessly. Lila felt a strange comfort in Ethan's presence, a warmth that was both unexpected and unsettling. "You've been patient with me," she said quietly. "I haven't been easy to reach." Ethan smiled softly. Patience is a small price to pay when someone's willing to teach you about their world, their thoughts, and their feelings. And I want to learn. That's all that matters to me. Lila felt a lump in her throat. She had spent so long building walls around her heart, protecting herself from disappointment and duty, and yet, here was someone who was not only willing to see past those walls, but to respect them. It was a strange, powerful feeling, one that made her chest tighten and her thoughts spin as they stood there, looking out at the stars. Lila realized that she was beginning to see Ethan as more than just a symbol of her obligations. He was a person with hopes, fears, and intentions that were entirely his own. And in that realization, a small, fragile seed of trust and admiration began to grow. The night deepened, and they returned to their quarters. Lila sat by the window, staring at the stars, her mind a whirl of emotions. She did not yet know what the future held, but she understood that something had begun between them, a connection born of respect, shared experiences, and genuine human qualities that could not be ignored. For the first time in a long while, Lila allowed herself to imagine a future where duty and choice might coexist, where trust and understanding could lead to something more. and though she still struggled with the idea of being forced into matrimony, she could not deny the small, growing hope that perhaps, with Ethan Clarke, this arranged engagement might become something meaningful, something unexpected, something that could change not just her life, but her heart. The station was quiet in the early morning, the usual hum of machinery mixing with the distant twinkle of stars. Lila Morgan awoke with a sense of unease, a tension that had been building over the past days. She had begun to trust Ethan Clarke, to see the human as more than a symbol.
Oh.
But she also knew that their connection was fragile. Trust was not easily earned, and neither of them fully understood the challenges that lay ahead. Their day began with a security briefing. Intelligence reports had indicated a potential threat to the Alliancer, rogue faction from a neighboring system that might attempt sabotage. The Council wanted both human and alien representatives to be familiar with emergency protocols. So Lila and Ethan were again paired together. The task was tense, but necessary, and Lila felt her adrenaline rise as they moved through drills and simulations. The simulation began with a sudden alarm, red lights flashing across the control panels. Lila felt her pulse quicken as the station's emergency procedures activated. Ethan moved beside her, calm and precise, issuing clear instructions to the team. His voice was steady, and his presence was grounding. Lila followed his lead, amazed at how effortlessly he handled the pressure. She realized that she trusted him completely in this situation, more than she had trusted anyone in a long time. They navigated the corridors, checking systems and ensuring the safety of everyone involved. The simulation was complex, requiring quick thinking and adaptability. Lila noticed how Ethan communicated with clarity and patience, making sure that everyone understood their roles. There was no arrogance in him, no need to dominate. He worked with her as a partner, not a leader imposing orders, and it made her heart stir in ways she hadn't expected. After the drill, they debriefed in a small room, the adrenaline still pumping through their veins. Lila felt a rush of relief and pride. "You handled that very well," she said, her voice quieter than usual, almost hesitant. Ethan smiled, a small, genuine curve of his lips. "We handled it together. You were incredible too. You made quick decisions and stayed calm even when things got intense. I couldn't have done it without you." Lila felt warmth creep into her chest. It was not just praise, it was acknowledgement, recognition of her abilities. It made her realize that she had begun to see him not just as a human, but as someone she could respect deeply. Later in the day, a real crisis struck. An unexpected power surge caused a minor breach in one of the outer sections of the station. Alarms blared and the team scrambled to respond. Lila and Ethan were immediately in the center of the action. The breach could have caused serious damage, and both of them worked quickly to contain it. Lila felt a thrill of fear mixed with focus, and she noticed Ethan's calm determination. He reassured the others, gave clear directions, and never faltered. At one point, a panel sparked dangerously close to Lila, and without thinking, Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her to safety. Her heart skipped a beat, a mix of fear and something more tender. She had come to rely on him, to trust him, and the instinctive act of protection sent a ripple through her emotions. She quickly pulled back mentally, reminding herself of the situation's urgency, but she could not ignore the flutter in her chest. After the breach was contained, they returned to a quieter area of the station. Both were breathing heavily, sweat on their brows, but there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. Lila finally let herself exhale, and she looked at Ethan. Thank you. That could have been much worse if you hadn't reacted so quickly." Ethan's expression softened. "I'd do it again, and I will, every time. You're important, Lila, and I won't let anything happen to you if I can prevent it." The sincerity in his voice hit her unexpectedly. She wanted to argue, to remind herself that this was still a forced engagement, that she could not rely on him emotionally. But she could not. His words had touched something deep inside, a part of her heart she had kept locked away for years. She felt her chest tighten and her throat constrict as she struggled to keep her composure. As the day wore on, they worked together to repair minor damages and reassure other personnel. Lila began to notice the way Ethan moved, the subtle ways he observed and assisted without being asked. There was a natural grace in his actions, a humanity that was quietly commanding. She had always respected competence, but now she found herself admiring qualities that were not just skillful but deeply considerate. When the immediate crisis was over, they took a brief walk on the observation deck, looking down at the planet below. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and for a moment the chaos of the station faded into insignificance. Lila felt her defenses soften, and she turned to Ethan. Almost afraid of what she might say, "You've changed the way I see humans," she admitted quietly. "I thought I knew what to expect, but you are different." Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady and gentle. "I hope that's a good thing," he said softly. "I want to show you that humans can be more than the stereotypes. That trust and respect are possible, even when circumstances are difficult." Lila felt a lump form in her throat. "It is a good thing," she whispered. "I don't fully understand it yet, but I feel something I didn't expect. Something I can't ignore." Ethan reached out, hesitating slightly, and placed his hand gently on hers. The touch was brief, but it carried warmth, reassurance, and an unspoken promise. Lila's heart trembled, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something tender that she was only beginning to name. She did not pull away, though she had every instinct to do so. Instead, she let the moment exist, fragile and unspoken. They stayed in silence for a while, watching the stars and letting the quiet fill the space between them. Lila realized that she was beginning to trust him not just with her safety but with her thoughts, her fears, and her heart. The experience of the day had broken down walls she had built around herself, and for the first time in years, she felt vulnerable and alive. As night fell, the station lights dimmed, and Lila and Ethan returned to their quarters. Lila sat by the window, staring at the stars, her mind replaying the day's events. She felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and a strange warmth that she could not deny. Ethan Clarke had shown her what it meant to be seen, to be respected, and to be protected. And in doing so, he had made her heart tremble. Sleep came slowly that night, filled with dreams of stars, human hands, and quiet moments of trust. Lila woke with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew the challenges ahead would not be easy. She knew there would be obstacles, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But she also knew that Ethan Clarke was not just a symbol of duty. He was someone she could rely on, someone who could teach her to trust, to hope, and perhaps even to love. And that realization, fragile and tentative as it was, filled her with a cautious but undeniable sense of hope for the days to come. The final day of the diplomatic visit arrived, and Lila Morgan awoke with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. The past days had shifted something deep inside her. She no longer saw Ethan Clarke as merely a human tied to an alliance she had not chosen. He had become someone she trusted, someone whose presence brought a strange warmth she could not ignore. Yet, the reality of their engagement still pressed heavily upon her, reminding her that the journey ahead would not be simple. The morning began with a council meeting. Delegates from various civilizations gathered to review the results of their negotiations, the outcomes of emergency simulations, and the plans for future cooperation. Lila and Ethan presented their joint report on the emergency scenarios they had faced together. Their teamwork was noted and praised by the council, highlighting the effectiveness of collaboration between species. Lila felt a quiet pride, realizing that their partnership had become more than symbolic. It had produced real results. After the formalities, the council dismissed the delegates for a brief reprieve before the closing ceremony. Lila and Ethan found themselves walking together along the observation deck, a place that had become a private refuge for them in the past days. The planet below shimmered in the station's light, casting colors across their faces. For a moment they were silent, letting the view speak for them. "I can't believe how much has changed in just a few days," Lila said softly. "I expected to feel trapped, resentful, even angry. Instead, I feel something else. I don't fully understand it, but I know it's real." Ethan glanced at her, his eyes calm and reassuring. "Change is often unexpected," he said. "But the important thing is that we faced it together. I didn't want to push, but I hoped you'd see me for who I am, not just what I represent." Lila felt a lump in her throat. She had spent years building walls, protecting herself from disappointment and control. Ethan had not torn those walls down forcefully. He had patiently shown her trust, respect, and sincerity. And in doing so, he had begun to reshape her understanding of connection, respect, and perhaps even love. The closing ceremony commenced with dignitaries seated in the grand hall, the same place where her engagement had first been formalized. Lila and Ethan walked together to the podium, their steps in sync, their expressions composed yet tinged with the intimacy that had grown between them. Speeches were made, agreements were signed, and the alliance was formally recognized. Throughout it all, Lila noticed Ethan's subtle gestures, his reassuring nods, the way he adjusted slightly to stay close without crowding her. Small actions, yet they carried weight in ways she had not expected. After the ceremony, a quiet celebration was held in a private lounge. Delegates mingled and laughter filled the space. Lila and Ethan found themselves seated near a window overlooking the stars. The conversation was light, filled with anecdotes and observations, but beneath the surface. Both were aware of the bond that had formed. "You've shown me a side of humanity I didn't think existed," Lila said quietly. "One that is thoughtful, patient, and genuine. I didn't expect to feel this way about anyone in this situation, and yet—" Ethan reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. "I never expected this either," he admitted. "But what I feel is real. I respect you, admire you, and I want to be by your side not just because we are supposed to be married, but because I choose to." Lila's chest tightened, and for a moment, she felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. She did not pull away. Instead, she allowed herself to acknowledge the tremor of emotions she had tried to deny for so long. "I don't know what the future holds," she whispered, "but I want to try with you." Ethan smiled, relief and tenderness in his eyes. "Then we start here, together." Step by step, moment by moment, the two spent the evening talking quietly, sharing thoughts, hopes, and dreams. They spoke of their respective worlds, the differences that had once seemed so vast now becoming bridges rather than barriers. Lila realized that the human qualities she had come to value, honesty, empathy, courage, were not just admirable traits, but foundations for a connection that could survive challenges and misunderstandings. As the night deepened, the station lights dimmed, and the stars outside the window glimmered like scattered jewels. Lila and Ethan stood together, hand in hand, taking in the view. The vastness of space seemed less intimidating now, a reminder that while the universe was immense, connections between individuals could hold immense meaning. "I never imagined I'd find someone I could trust and care for in a situation like this," Lila said softly, "and I never imagined I'd meet someone who could teach me so much about patience, understanding, and courage," Ethan replied. They stood in silence for a moment, letting their words settle between them. Lila felt a sense of peace, recognition that despite the circumstances that had forced them together, something genuine had grown. It was fragile, new, and uncertain, yet it was hers to embrace. She understood now that love did not always arrive in ways one expected. Sometimes it grew slowly, nurtured by respect, trust, and shared experiences. When the time came for her to retire to her quarters, Lila felt a sense of completion. She had faced the duties imposed upon her, navigated the complexities of interstellar diplomacy, and discovered a connection that was real and human. Ethan had not just been a partner in protocol or ceremony. He had been a companion, a protector, and a mirror reflecting qualities she valued and admired as she lay down to rest. Lila stared at the stars, thinking of the days to come. The alliance would continue, the responsibilities of her position would endure, and challenges would arise. But she felt prepared to face them, not alone, but with someone who had earned her trust and admiration. Someone who had made her heart tremble not with fear or duty, but with the promise of possibility. Sleep came with a sense of hope and quiet anticipation. Dreams were filled with stars, gentle laughter, and shared moments of understanding. Leela awoke with the knowledge that while her engagement had begun as a duty, it had grown into something far more meaningful. She was no longer trapped by circumstance. Instead, she had discovered the beginnings of a partnership built on trust, respect, and the quiet power of human connection. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Lila Morgan faced it with a heart open to possibility. And beside her, Ethan Clark stood ready to walk it with her. Together, step by step, toward a future that neither of them could have predicted, but both now had the courage to embrace. Leela Morgan awoke early, the soft hum of the space station around her already alive with movement. Though the formalities of the alliance had concluded, she knew that the journey of understanding and companionship with Ethan Clark was only beginning. The past days had shifted something fundamental in her heart. She had learned to trust him, to respect him, and even to admire him. Yet the thought of what lay ahead, living with another person, bridging two very different worlds, filled her with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Breakfast was quiet. The main dining hall filled with lingering diplomats and crew members going about their routines. Ethan joined her, his calm presence immediately soothing. He greeted her with a warm smile, one that seemed to say, without words, that they would face whatever came next together. Lila felt a flutter in her chest. The same tremor that had begun on the day of their first real conversation. The morning passed with more practical matters, preparing for the return to their respective homes while planning for future collaboration. Lila was surprised at how easily she and Ethan coordinated, their teamwork now flowing naturally. She had come to rely on him, not because of obligation, but because he had proven himself worthy of her trust. And the more she relied on him, the more she felt an unfamiliar warmth growing in her heart. Later, they were asked to take a tour of the station's research wing, a chance to learn about the technological innovations that had impressed both their civilizations. Leela marveled at the displays, her knowledge of science making her appreciate the intricacies even more. Ethan's curiosity was infectious. He asked questions, offered observations, and listened intently to explanations. Lila noticed how he remembered small details, connecting them to earlier conversations, and she felt admiration swell within her. He was not just attentive, he was thoughtful, aware, and kind in ways that she had not expected. As they walked, Lila felt the ease between them grow. She spoke more freely than she had anticipated, sharing ideas and theories she had often kept to herself. Ethan responded with respect and genuine interest, never making her feel small or foolish for her knowledge. It was a strange relief to be treated as an equal, not just a representative of a culture or a piece in a political puzzle. And with each passing moment, the invisible walls she had built around herself continued to soften. A sudden alert interrupted their tour minor. Malfunction in one of the outer observation pods. The station required immediate attention, and Leela and Ethan were once again called to act. They hurried to the site, moving through familiar corridors that now felt more like shared territory than alien space. Working together, they assessed the problem, coordinated with the technical team, and ensured that everything returned to normal. Leela felt a rush of adrenaline, and this time, she noticed a smile tug at Ethan's lips as they successfully resolved the issue. "Not bad for a human-alien team," Ethan said with a chuckle, his eyes twinkling. Leela laughed lightly, shaking her head. "I might start to believe humans aren't completely hopeless after all." He smiled warmly, the kind of smile that made her heart skip a beat. It was not grand or dramatic, but simple, genuine, and human. She realized more clearly than ever that her feelings for him were no longer tentative or fleeting. They were growing quietly, but persistently, rooted in respect, trust, and the shared experiences of the past days. After the incident, they found themselves walking along the observation deck, a place that had become their refuge. The stars stretched endlessly, a reminder of the vastness beyond the station and the smallness of their immediate worries. Lila felt a sense of peace, tempered with excitement. She spoke. "I never imagined that I could feel at ease with a human," she admitted softly. "Yet here I am, realizing that it is possible, that trust can exist even when everything seemed impossible." Ethan reached for her hand, holding it gently. I never expected this either. But trust and connection are not bound by species. They are born of honesty, respect, and the willingness to be present for one another. Lila felt her chest tighten, a tremor she had come to recognize as something more than fear or duty. It was a spark of affection, a seed of something tender and human that had been nurtured over days of shared experiences, challenges, and quiet conversations. She realized that she had begun to care deeply for him, in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The day progressed with quiet reflection. As both of them prepared for the final debriefing and return, Lila found herself observing Ethan, noting his small gestures, the way he paused to listen, the careful way he navigated the station, the subtle warmth he extended to everyone around him. These were not grand gestures, but they mattered to her profoundly. They spoke of a character she had grown to trust, admire, and slowly cherish. During the final briefing, their collaborative work was praised by the council. Lila felt a swell of pride as she realized how much they had accomplished together. Ethan's presence beside her was reassuring, his steady demeanor a constant reminder that she was not alone. The acknowledgement was not just professional, it was personal, a silent recognition of the partnership they had forged. After the briefing, they had a moment alone on the observation deck, the station quiet and peaceful. Lila turned to Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. I've learned something about myself these past days, that even in situations I cannot choose, I can find connection, trust, and even affection. Ethan looked at her, his expression soft. And I've learned that sometimes the most unexpected connections are the most meaningful. I never expected to feel this way, but I do. And I hope we can continue, not because we must, but because we choose to. Lila felt her heart tremble again, a mixture of fear and hope. She had been trained to think in terms of duty and obligation. But she now understood that human connection could transcend protocol and expectation. It was a fragile, beautiful thing, and she felt it growing between them, steady and undeniable. As night fell, the station's lights dimmed, casting a soft glow across the observation deck. Lila and Ethan remained side by side, looking out at the stars. She realized that while the journey ahead would not be easy bridging two worlds, two species, two ways of life, the foundation they had built was strong. It was built on trust, respect, understanding, the quiet bravery of opening oneself to another person. When it was time to return to their quarters, Lila felt a sense of anticipation for the days to come. She understood that the engagement, once forced and cold, had become something alive, shaped by experiences, choices, and shared humanity. She had discovered that even in situations beyond her control, she could find warmth, connection, and perhaps even love as she lay down to rest that night. The stars outside her window casting gentle light across her room, Lila felt a quiet peace. The tremor in her heart was no longer fear, it was hope. Hope for a future where she and Ethan could navigate challenges together, learn from one another, and build a partnership that was not just mandated by duty, but chosen by both. It was a beginning, fragile yet full of possibility, and she embraced it with an openness she had not known she could feel.